Now, an expansion of cooperation in politics, the economy and culture. That agreed between the North Korean leader Kim Jong-Un and China's Xi Jinping as the two agreed to open a new chapter in ties. The two saying they'll strive for closer strategic communication through visits to each other's countries by high-level officials. Among the more controversial issues, Kim telling Xi he will fully support the One China principle. Now, that Beijing views as meaning that both sides, for example, of the Taiwan Strait, belong to one country. Well, let's hear a little bit about what the two leaders had to say.
I am very pleased to visit the beautiful city of Pyongyang once again after 7 years. I feel especially warm and familiar. I am ready to work with you, General Secretary, to take this visit as an opportunity to strengthen top-level planning and strategic guidance for China-DPRK relations in a new era.
We believe that this visit once again clearly demonstrates that the DPRK and China have always stood on the right side of history, the side of autonomy and justice. It also shows the world that no matter how the international situation may evolve, the time-tested DPRK-China relations remain unbreakable.
Well, that visit coming as the geopolitical landscape continues to shift, both regionally and globally. Going to talk about the latest then with our international affairs commentator, Doug Herbert, with me here on set. Doug, this trip is wrapping up. I mean, what was the point? What are your main takeaways?
Yeah, well, look, there's this old Chinese phrase, an expression that is as close as lips and teeth, right? Very, very graphic there. And it's been used very often to describe the relationship between China and what has traditionally been sort of its junior partner in their strategic ties and their alliance. And publicly, at least, watching the images from this visit and the grand pomp and ceremony and the Chinese kids waving balloons and hopping on Pyongyang's largest square to greet Xi Jinping publicly, as close in lips and teeth is the image you get from this visit. But, you scratch the surface and there's a lot more going on, right? As you said at the top, this is a rare visit. Rare meaning the last time that Xi Jinping, he doesn't travel abroad that often, and this is his first foreign trip this year. Last time was to North Korea was 2019 in a very different era. And even as they are sort of proclaiming greater strategic ties and unity, that's all true. Sort of both sides wanting to reaffirm those ties that they have traditionally shared at a time where, as you said, we have a lot of diplomatic strains, a lot of shifting global dynamics. All of that show their unity. Scratch the surface, and if you actually look through the press releases from the state-controlled agencies on either side, whether it's China or North Korea, very different narratives. Same visit, different narratives. So in the Korean case, the KCNA agency is sort of talking down this sense of North Korea as a junior partner to China, right? That China sort of is the biggest benefactor. China is the biggest trade partner of North Korea. It's been its diplomatic backer through thick and thin. But in the North Korean copy, you don't see any of this hinting of a dependent relationship. It's more stressing this equal partnership, a sort of special relationship, sort of elevating Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, to the same level on the diplomatic stage as Xi Jinping. Now, to the outside world looking in, you say, well, that's patently absurd. China's the rising power, the number 2 power, some would say number 1 already. In the Chinese press, you don't have that parity, that lack of dependence. You have very much more talk on the economic emphasis, right? You have talk of these high-level exchanges. You have talk of boosting the economic ties from issues from trade to agriculture to construction to tourism, all of those issues, and also transport links, opening up new bridges, new rail links, all of that, but not on this sense of Xi Jinping, from the Chinese perspective, is there, even if it's not said explicitly, to remind Kim Jong-un at a time when he's been reaching out to Russia, giving Putin troops and munitions for Russia's war against Ukraine, reminding him, remember who your best friend is right now. Remember who your real benefactor is. And remember, when push comes to shove, we're the ones who have been here for you. And that is what you should keep in mind when you step up on the diplomatic stage, whether it's with Putin or anyone else.
Doug, looking at this a bit wider, I mean, of course, it's fascinating to see what the two leaders have had to say, what's going on there. But, of course, what happens there impacts so many other stories that we talk about here on France 24. I mean, if you were Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump watching this, what would you have been thinking?
Well, two very different things. If you're Vladimir Putin, like I said, North Korea, it's estimated by South Korean intelligence, they've given about 15,000 troops to Russia. towards the war effort, to support Russian forces who are against Ukraine. They've also given lots and lots of weapons by the way of artillery rounds, by the way of rockets, by the way of ballistic missiles, by the way of all munitions of all sorts of calibers. That's a lot of stuff that North Korea has given Russia in reportedly exchange for military technology and know-how and things like that. It's a tight relationship. If you're Putin sitting there, you might be wondering in the back of the mind, is that relationship at all in threat? And I don't think he thinks it is. I think as long as he still gets what he wants and needs from North Korea, even though he doesn't explicitly acknowledge that contribution as such, but as long as he's getting what he needs, I don't necessarily think he sees Xi Jinping's visit as a threat to North Korea's relationship with him. He probably understands that, yeah, they're neighbors. Geopolitically, it makes sense. Yeah, China's traditionally been the biggest partner and strategic ally. He can have his relationship with Kim Jong-un as long as he doesn't take away mine. Trump is very different. Trump is obsessed with one issue. He knows probably nothing else about North Korea but nuclear. Nukes, 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 nukes. So while he's waging a war against Iran to purportedly stop Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, here's North Korea in the other corner, all but raising its hand saying, "Hi, Donald Trump, here's our nuclear weapon. It's not for peaceful means. It's a nuclear weapon program, an actual weapon. Here it is." And yet the war is being waged over in Iran. Donald Trump is obsessed with the denuclearization. That's the big diplomatic jargon word that's used all the time. Whenever he last had his talks with Kim Jong-un, those talks broke down in acrimony. Kim Jong-un wants nothing to do with denuclearization. He is in fine fettle right now. He's probably at his smuggest, most confident that he's been in years. He recently visited, Kim Jong-un, a new facility to produce ingredients for nuclear material and weapons. So Kim Jong-un wants sort of nothing to do right now, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's been hitting. He'd like to open up more talks with Kim Jong-un once again. Kim Jong-un has sort of, if not rebuffed it, just hasn't really responded in any way. So Donald Trump is probably looking at this and a little perplexed. And perhaps his takeaway is he does see Putin and Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping, that triumvirate there, all reinforcing their strategic relationship, perhaps at his expense. And he's going to want some in. Donald Trump doesn't like anyone stealing his thunder and his limelight.
And just finally, Doug, we've just got time to ask you, you touched on it there, but that Kim Jong-un situation, if that's the right way of putting it, top of his game, I mean, where does all of this leave him, do you think?
Right now, if you're Kim Jong-un, you're doing just fine, right? At least from his perspective. Remember a few years back, half a decade ago, COVID, pandemic, North Korea, it was hermetically, well, it's always been hermetically sealed, but even more so than ever, it literally shut itself off to the world. Nothing got in, nothing got out. He cracked down with the economy. He got very tough today. There are analysts of North Korea who basically say that he is at the top of his consolidation of power, that he is now North Korea's most powerful leader, even more powerful than his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, the founder of the North Korean, modern North Korea. So, top of the game, and his nuclear program is advanced right now. And he probably is waiting for recognition from his allies and adversaries that it's a nuclear power, essentially. So he is not as isolated as he used to be. He thinks that, he's still economically needy, very needy on many fronts. But as far as having ensconced himself and not having any opponents around him, at least publicly known opponents, and being able to get leaders like Xi Jinping to come courting him rather than him going to Beijing, as he did last year, that's a sign, that sort of answers your question, where Kim Jong-un stands right now. He's at the top of his game from his own perspective.